What's up, everyone, and welcome back. I've just come back from seeing Babygirl, so without further ado, let's just get straight into it and take a look at some footage. So Babygirl is a 2024 release written and directed by Halina Reijn, and it's about a high-powered CEO who puts her career and family on the line when she begins a torrid affair with her much younger intern. Film stars Nicole Kidman, Dickinson, Antonio Banderas, and Sophie Wilde. So, this is a little bit of a weird one. I'm sure a lot of people who are interested in films are quite familiar with the trailer for this film, and it was kind of marketed as like a kind of successor to Basic Instinct. And there has been in recent years this kind of resurgence of the erotic thriller. There was on Netflix last year a film called Fair Play, which kind of played with the sexual tension and the power dynamic that comes with these things. And it seemed quite clear from the trailer we were getting another one from the director of Bodies, 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 Bodies. I think it's 4 bodies in that, I'm not sure. But this had done the sort of end of summer, early fall festival season. I think it premiered at Toronto and got pretty big reactions over there. We know that Nicole Kidman was now nominated for a Golden Globe for this performance, and now it's finally out in the UK. And as I said, it's a little bit weird, but that's not to say that it isn't good. But that's exactly why we're here, so I guess let's dive straight into it. And let's start with Halina Reijn herself. The only film I've seen from her previously was, as I mentioned, Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. I did check, it is 3. And that was sort of a contained murder mystery, sort of cat and mouse horror thriller. Not really much more on the horror side, but very like towards a Gen Z audience, and I actually quite enjoyed that film. I thought it was a bit of fun. It introduced me to people like Rachel Sennett, who I really like, and I thought it was pretty well directed as well. It was kind of tongue-in-cheek and pretty clever at the same time. So I thought it was quite curious that she was going for this kind of direction with the somewhat erotic thriller route, but it's actually not the first time she's done this sort of like sexual power dynamic thing. She did a film called Instinct back in 2019, I think, which granted I have not seen, but I believe that's about a psychologist in a prison who has an intimate relationship with one of the people that she's treating in there, an inmate. So she was kind of returning to the power dynamics around sexual tension with this film. And to speak about the direction here and the script, which she's responsible for, this is where I actually have some issues with this film, and albeit not very big ones, but I did find it overall just quite strange in a way, where this definitely isn't in any kind of way a spiritual successor to Basic Instinct. That film was rife with this kind of sinister sexual tension, and for those that have seen Basic Instinct, we know how it ends. There's nothing along those lines in terms of the outcome of Basic Instinct in this film. This is much more innocent in a way. It's quite simply about this CEO, Romy, who is the CEO of this kind of AI robot automation company where their goal is to take away the mundaneness of tasks and make them automated so people can get their time back. And she's super successful, and obviously she's a woman in this huge tech world, and this very tall, good-looking intern comes in, and there's immediate sexual tension between the two of them, and things kind of unfold from there. And I think that's where my main kind of problem lies in this film. I'll kind of divert and I'll go towards the two main cast members of this film with Nicole Kidman and Dickinson. And I'll just say that in their respective roles, they're both very good. And the main thing is, I mentioned this in my review of We Live in Time, is they have chemistry. You believe the tension that's created between them, and you believe it with the bare minimum that the script gives you, because then now coming back to my actual problem, the screenplay isn't that extensive of this film. To say that it's a lot of people meeting in a room, exchanging a couple of sentences, and then there's some, frankly, really well shot love scene, or it just kind of moves from scene to scene. There's no real actual development of these characters. There's no conversation where you get to know a little bit more about them, about their motivations, about even their motivation in this. Everything is extremely surface level. And for the first half of the film, in a lot of the interactions, I don't know what other audiences are experiencing, but the theater I was in, people were laughing at a lot of these interactions. And granted, I think some of them were definitely played for comedy. I don't know if all of them were. And the whole unfolding of their relationship happens very quickly in a film which isn't exactly short. It's just under 2 hours long. But they kind of go from 0 to 100 on this relationship in a matter of maybe two scenes with very little interaction with each other, just sharing a look here and there, and maybe one conversation. But I think I needed a little bit more in that regard. As I said, you buy the two actors just because they're so good against each other. But in terms of the relationship, at the beginning, I was kind of just like, how are they sending each other these sorts of signals? Maybe I'm not smart enough to pick up on it, who knows? But at first, it didn't seem totally believable. But then, as I said, it's shot so well and there's a really great soundtrack that I started to forgive a lot of it, because the first, I guess, half of the film goes by pretty quickly and it moves really well and it's edited really well. But there is a lull in the middle of the second act where things really slow down and decisions are being made about certain characters, and it doesn't really feel well gelled, for lack of a better term. There's a sort of subplot involving Sophie Wilde's character, because she's like the assistant to Romy in this. Her name is Esme, and that kind of opens up at the beginning of the film and then disappears and kind of comes back at the end, and it just felt like it didn't really need to be there, if I'm being honest. And it's a very weird thing, because this film all at once feels like it's a little over edited, like a lot of things were cut, but it also feels very under edited at the same time, as I said, with these characters. Even the character of Antonio Banderas, even though in the final third of the film he really gets to shine and you see what a great actor Antonio Banderas is, but for a lot of the film he's kind of just there. He doesn't really have much to do. The interactions between himself and his wife Romy in the situation are not all that meaningful, and he's completely oblivious to anything going on because she's a woman in tech, she's very busy, she works a lot, she's always on her phone. He's a theatre director, so there is that disconnect with them from the beginning. But as I said, it just feels like he's very insignificant until the boiling point of the story, and that's another kind of issue I have. The film does build up to this boiling point and there's this threat of this tension arising. But when it finally gets to it, I kind of liked that it didn't go for the big kind of Hollywood like screaming match and stuff like that. But with the way everything wraps up, I guess it sort of makes sense in the grand scheme of what this film is going for. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a little bit underwhelmed. So to kind of summarize and conclude all at the same time, if we look at Halina Reijn and her filmography so far, it is nice to see that she's pushing herself into this kind of direction. I thought with Bodies, Bodies, Bodies that she might be more of a kind of like poppy director, for lack of a better term, but with this she seems to want to do something a little bit more serious. But with that seriousness comes the necessity for a much better script, if you ask me. And I think if she had a little bit more time to maybe flesh the characters out in a better script, this could have gone from a pretty good film to a really, really good film with a lot to say. The performances overall are pretty great. Kidman is definitely the standout. I still don't know if this is a awards-worthy performance. It does feel like, I mean, Nicole Kidman is a great actress. It does feel like she's phoning it in a little bit and doing the kind of Nicole Kidman thing. I would actually say the second best performer in this film is Banderas, because he has those moments to shine towards the end of the film. Dickinson is believable in what he has to do, very charismatic without having to say all that much, and that's a very difficult thing. And even despite her character, as I said, being a little bit insignificant and didn't really need to be there, I do think Sophie Wilde was actually well suited for this role. The film looks really good and the soundtrack is really great as well. And overall, I just think this film is pretty good. It doesn't get anywhere near great, but it also doesn't go anywhere near bad at the same time. So it's a bit of a weird one for me to recommend. If you watch the trailer and you feel like that's for you, definitely go and watch it. If you watch the trailer and you were like, not so sure about that one, then I would probably avoid it. Save yourself the money. But yes, Babygirl. And now we come to the point in the video where I want to hear from you. If you've seen Babygirl, if you haven't seen Babygirl, if you're excited to see it, if you think the trailer looks like rubbish and you really don't want to see it, go crazy in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, share it with your friends. As you know, all of that really helps. If you did tune in to the Adlib podcast last week, you know, Andrea and myself went through reviews for We Live in Time and for Nosferatu, and we also went through our top 10 of 2024. and I think we actually gave pretty good lists from the both of us. I will be on the Adlib podcast next Monday, as usual, live on YouTube. That will be 7:30 p.m. in the UK or 8:30 p.m. in Malta. It's actually going to be a pretty busy month for reviews if I can actually get to go and see everything. Next week there'll be Wolfman coming out, which is getting really good reviews. I really like Lee Whannell's The Invisible Man, and I like the story of the Wolfman, so I'm quite excited to see that. A Complete Unknown is coming out next week as well, and then later in the month we have The Brutalist as well, which I cannot wait to see. So if you're interested for any of those films and you want to see my review, you know where to find me. But until then, be a good girl, drink your milk, and I'll see you soon.